So today, I want to talk about the approach that FDA is taking to foster innovation through modernization and also through transforming how we operate. So before we go into the approach, I want to just go back to the mission of the FDA. So I think most people, during the pandemic, you've heard, what FDA does and how we're involved with COVID and vaccines. But with FDA, we also are charged with protecting the public health by ensuring the safety and efficacy and security of not only drugs, but also foods, tobacco products, medical devices as well. And if you think about the magnitude of products that we regulate, you're talking about over 100,000 tobacco products, right? 78% of the U.S. food supply. And think about regulating all of those products. It can get complex. And I've been at the FDA for about 10 years. My name's Adele Nguyen, Senior Technical Advisor, FDA. All that means is just fancy for I've been here a while. All right, okay. And I'm part of the newly created Enterprise Transformation Operations team. So what does that mean? Again, let's go back, right? So with our mission, through the 10 years I've been there, and you've seen the growth in technology, but also, as our products become more advanced technology, but there's also advancement in how these products are produced and manufactured. So that increases the complexity of regulating those products as well. And so back in about September of 2019, our Office of Digital Transformation, which is pretty much our IT department, our office, rolled out this TMAP. We call it TMAP. It's the Technology Modernization Action Plan. You can find it on the website. Do a quick search and you'll find it. So the key there is, why the TMAP? So we know we need to modernize. We know we need to foster innovation. But how do we do that, right? We can tell the centers, build great things, build great applications. But if you don't have the underlying foundation to allow them to build those innovation on top of, then it doesn't really help. So the TMAP was a plan, more of a roadmap of, okay, how do we improve or modernize our foundational technology, right? So this is where we talk about moving forward with cloud computing or data analytics and things like that. And so there was a plan put in place to say, this is what FDA is marching towards in order to modernize. And which is great. So now we have this plan. We know how we want to go about this. So we want to modernize. But then it's like, what are we modernizing, right? We have so many programs. We have so many centers. We have Center of Drugs. We have Center of Biologics. We have veterinary medicine, medical devices, tobacco. Who do we work on first? Historically, IT projects were developed by program areas, right? And it makes sense because each program area are experts in that program, in that subject area. But the challenge we find is that we have, for example, we end up having multiple systems that do something very similar, right? We talk about it like it's popcorn. Everyone decided to pop popcorn, but then everyone put in different flavors. We have caramel, peanut, caramel, some peanut butter in there, maybe some butter and cheddar cheese, whatever. But it's very hard to manage. And also it makes it very hard to share data because now the systems aren't interoperable, right? And so that's why, for TMAP, we talk about, the key requirements, as we build our platforms and our technologies. One, it must be scalable in order to encompass, all the increasing regulatory work that we do, and it has to be flexible. When we want to make a change, we don't want to take 6 months, a year, 2 years to make a change, right? And it has to be interoperable. Because FDA, with all the things we regulate, all the data that we collect and create, that data can be used to inform really important decisions, regulatory decisions. But it's hard to do that if your systems aren't talking to each other and you don't have all that data really available. And so we have that. And then this is where Enterprise Modernization Action Plan comes in, because this is more the business side. So this is telling us, the what. What do we need to work on exactly? So what are the priorities of the agency? And in looking at that, we looked at the main goal for the EMAP. Number one was to establish this ETO group, the Enterprise Transformation Operations Team. And our goal is to look at all the capabilities across the agency, and then look at where are there commonalities, right, across the agency, and what processes are common. So we're like, and so we started with this proof of concept, and we decided to focus on inspections. Why? Because COVID, right? During the pandemic, there was a huge impact on the inspection work that FDA needed to do, and so we decided to focus on inspections. But again, the main point of ETO was looking at capabilities, and then, instead of having a project per program area, we look at program areas that cross the entire agency, right? Or capabilities or processes. So inspection hits multiple programs, right? We have the drug pharma folks who have to do inspections on drugs and manufacturings, and then we also have the foods folks. They inspect food products, and they go out to farms. And then you also have your biologics who do different inspections. You have tobacco teams as well. So they all do inspections, right? They all make popcorn, but they all have their specific flavors. And they all do them a different way. So instead of focusing on building that platform for inspections we started with a process. How do we optimize this process? How do we make this inspection process as common as possible, right? With the understanding that there are some nuances between each program, but there are underlying processes that can be done the same way. So we did that first. We had a project in place to analyze our current process and then make recommendations on how do we optimize that. And then from there, we're saying, okay, now that we have that recommendation, we know what we want to work on. Now it's the how, right? So this is where we decided to create this pilot, because I don't know about the other agencies, but trying to get multiple stakeholders from multiple business lines together, it's not the easiest thing to do. Now, if you all have an easy way to do that, please let me know. But it's not easy. And of course, everyone's concerned, because they're like, well, are you going to be able to handle my flavor, right? This is a great idea. Everyone was on board. We want to do this. We think it's great for the agency. It'll make us more efficient. It'll make us more cost effective. But we want to make sure we can still fulfill our piece of the mission, right? So we said, you know what? We're going to create a pilot. It's more of a proof of concept. People like the word pilot better, so we used it, but it's more of a proof of concept. So we met with the stakeholders. We have them all together. So we have our various stakeholders. We have our development team as well, all as one integrated project team. And we met with them, and we meet with them regularly. And the first question we ask them is, in order for you to build confidence in this platform, and for you to say, yes, we want to try this and use this platform, what key features do you want to see, right, initially? And of course, we have multiple programs, multiple requirements, right? We have one program that said, we are fine with doing our inspection work online. But then we had another program, no, we need to be able to do it offline. And offline includes, we need to be able to go on inspection, hold a mobile device, do everything offline with no internet connectivity. Why? Because we're in farms. We go to farms, we go to these remote rural areas, we don't always have a connection. But we need to be able to still do our work. We also need to be able to print online. We need to be able to do digital signatures online. Oh, and by the way, we need multiple digital signatures on a document offline. And then we hear about the pain points. And the biggest pain point we hear about the system that's currently in place is the system we have currently in place works. However, whenever we need to make a change, it takes forever. And we understand why, but from a regulatory perspective, we just can't afford to wait that long. So can you build us something where if we need to make a change, we don't have to wait 6 months for that change to happen, right? And so we took all these requirements and for this pilot, we say, okay, you know what? We're going to do this. But again, they're still skeptical. So we're like, you know what we'll do is, because you're part of our integrated project team, we are going to develop, and we're going to have you see what we build along the way, right? And as far as the approach of how we do that, we partnered up with our Digital Services Center, which is also a component of FDA over the Office of Digital Transformation. And this Digital Service Center was actually created as a partnership with ICF. So ODT has created this service where, it's an in-house service where they actually build, do development work for the agency. And so this Digital Service Center, or DSC, was created. And so we're like, you know what better way to show our stakeholders and the centers how we can do this as one unit by using our, in-house team, in a sense, right? To say, hey, our IT team, our ODT, Office of Digital Transformation, they offer this service, and they're in-house for us. And so if we can prove out that as well, and prove how we can develop something quickly, but also adjustable and flexible. And so with that, I want to introduce you to Elliot. He is our chief architect of our project. And I guess he can do some more introduction of himself. But he's going to talk about the more specific approach we took for this project moving forward.
Great, thanks, Adele. So we need to go fast. We need to be able to change easily. And that sounds a lot like Agile, probably to everyone here, right? The cause of and solution to all of your problems. But we think Agile is a good idea too. It is. But you have to do it right, and that's not necessarily a given. And that's really where Appian comes in for us. Appian supports Agile uniquely well because Appian's built for change. Appian, you get real-time feedback as you're making changes. You can see live everything that's going on. Changes propagate automatically. As new technologies come out, the platform automatically updates underneath what you already have, and you get to take advantage of those changes, UI modernizations, performance improvements, right? All of that comes with the platform. It's built in. And so by really leaning into how Appian wants to be used, we can stay nimble, we can stay agile. The data fabric, right? If all your data is sort of in one place, regardless of where it originated, then your interfaces, your front end doesn't necessarily care as much about the data structure or the data origination point. I can swap my interfaces in and out. If I have a view to the data today that works really well, and tomorrow I realize I need something different, I can just swap those interfaces. I don't have to touch my backend data. And Appian has been focused on this. Appian supports this really, really well. And when we can change quickly, that allows us to do what we really want to do, which is focus on the mission. And that's so important because missions change. They change constantly, and they're complex. At FDA, we've got all these different offices, and we have all these different stakeholders, and trying to get time on everyone's calendar, let alone trying to run a productive meeting, with 50 people in the room, it's just never going to happen. So we don't even try. What we do is we lean into that ability to change, and we focus on the missions and the needs of each office. We'll sit down with foods, and we'll figure out what foods needs, and we'll put together a prototype, and we'll run it by them, and we'll run that prototype by drugs. And when drugs says that they need something slightly different, that's fine. We were ready for that. We knew that was going to happen. And we tweak the prototype, and we circle back to foods and say, all right, we've tweaked it, and we do that continuous feedback loop to really refine and hone in on exactly what things need to be. And when we get the thing built and then the regulatory requirements change or we get new information, it's okay because we were prepared for that from the very get-go. So ultimately, we build the right thing by building the right way. If you can focus on the mission and you can stay nimble, you're never really more than 1-2 degrees of change away from where you need to be. And so that's sort of our secret for how we're handling all these different offices and programs and getting everyone on the same page across such a large and complex enterprise is by not necessarily committing to something at the very beginning, laying out our plan and just sticking with it, come hell or high water, right? But by having a constant process of checking in with the stakeholders and refining and doing small groups and getting doing quick iterations so people can get their hands on it and give us that feedback. And I think in terms of our choice of Appian as a platform, it's really perfect for that. So with that in mind, I'll go ahead and open it up for questions. Please.
You mentioned about the data fabric
Mm-hmm.
and the siloed data,
Yeah.
different types of data within drugs versus foods. So in this pilot, I was curious to know how were you able to handle all the data sources? Did you aggregate the data through a fiber mechanism, or do you kind of pulled in?
Yeah, so we definitely did. We leaned pretty hard into that. So Appian Records, right, is how we do that. And I love Appian Records. We made a rule on the project, no database views, no stored procedures, not allowed on our project. We are leaning fully into Appian Records and I think what they're sort of calling the modern records vision. Because of exactly that. So I can create, my records on top of various disparate data sources. And when those change, or if my source of truth changes, I want to point to a different database, it's okay because my record structure hasn't changed. And vice versa, right? If I need to add columns, I don't have to go through another center and change the underlying database. I can add columns onto my records. And so, yeah, I think it was really important in this project. One of the things is that we leaned really, really heavily into that, and we are leaning really, really heavily into that in order to stay nimble because that's so important. Any other questions?
How did you address the creating a similar application that works online and offline?
Yeah, so I think the way that we're doing that is we're focusing offline first, right? So it'll work the same way online that it does offline. Just make everything work offline, and then of course it will also work online. And we partnered with the mobile team pretty closely. They're supporting us through different steps. If there are little requirements here or there, they've actually been really great about helping us figure out maybe here's a prototype of a feature to meet that gap, or here's a really creative way. But essentially the model is we have a process, and we aggregate our data. We gather the things that we know we're going to need for a given inspection. We pipe that into an interface, right, and work essentially locally in our interface, and it's kind of one interface behind the scenes with different views of the data as needed to step through your process. And then at the end, we say, okay, what's the state of all our data, all our variables, go back into the process, and then persist that to all the places that we need to.
When you say mobile team, you're talking about the Appian mobile team?
Yes, yeah, the Appian mobile team has been working very closely with us, which we appreciate. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I heard nowadays that multiple folks have to sign the documents.
Mm-hmm.
If it is completely offline, or does it have to, for the second person to sign it, the first person has to upload or do something, right?
Yeah, so I think that's exactly what we're doing. There is obviously going to be some logistical challenge simply around the fact that they are offline, but fortunately people are co-located during an inspection, so we can download the document, have someone sign it, the next person can download it, sign, add their additional signature, and then once we have all the signatures, upload back at the end. And I think one of the things that Appian was helping us with was the ability to export the data while we're still offline. So that's one of the places that the Appian mobile team has been really supportive in helping us figure out data in and out while staying offline so that we can do exactly that.
If they're co-located, is upload, download happening, or the devices are talking to each other, or is there a local device that's working as a peer-to-peer, something like that, or?
So it's going to be a little bit up to the inspection teams to figure out, their own, because different teams are going to want to do things different ways. But you could certainly, you can have two devices talk to each other, obviously over Bluetooth, still offline, or you could use a thumb drive or something of that nature to pull the document past the thumb drive over to the next
I think the
one.
other option we have is also just using that one device, which is what they do now with the current system they have, is where they have that one device, and then the person puts in their card, do the sign, and then they pass it to the next person, because they are co-located.
Right, thanks, Adele. Yes, so the other option too is so sometimes pass the document around, or instead of passing the document around, pass your card around, your PIV card, so that each person can sign using the PIV card. Maybe the same person stays logged in, but the PIV card is unique in each case.
I'm curious about the discussion from, offline to online things, but also just, Adele, if you could speak to some of the mission forward transformation that's happened as a result of these solutions.
Can you repeat that again? Give me time to think.
I'm curious how this is spilled over to the inspectors, right? The way that it's improved the mission delivery with the other folks who aren't necessarily in a technology forward organization.
Oh, right. So I think from our stakeholders, most of our stakeholders are investigators. It's funny, they call investigators do inspections, inspectors do investigations. Don't understand. But anyway, so we have mostly investigators as our stakeholder group, and from the food and the drug side. So it's interesting, they've actually gotten pretty excited. I think at first they were very skeptical. It's like, how is this going to work? We have a system in place. Yes, it's not great, right? But how are you really going to can you really do this better? And when we said, we're going to try, and we're going to show you, we run 2-week sprint cycles. So at the end of every 2 weeks, we're going to have a sprint review. We can actually show you and demo what's been done. And don't panic. If it doesn't look exactly right, it's okay. Tell us what you want updated. And there have been times where the team's been great about, what you want that changed? They'll do it on the fly, show it there. Does that look good now? And they're like, great, and so they get excited. So now we have too many requirements, right, coming in. And then like, wait, we will give you everything, well, most everything that you want, but we need to prioritize. Again, it's a pilot, and I think one of the things is, they're so excited, it's a pilot, they want everything done now. And I think that's why the Agile approach works for us, because look, we can't do everything now. But again, this is proof of concept. What will build confidence, right? What will make you say, yes, we want to go this route, and we want to continue building. And so, give us these key features. So we're doing that first. But then now they're starting to think about, the possibilities. Because before, the requirements we got were based on their past experience, right? And it's based on the limitations that they had prior. So no, forget about that. If you didn't have limitations, right, don't think about the system you're in now. Think about ideally, what's the ideal process for you, and how it would help you do your work better, and easier. Give us those requirements, right? And then we'll try to build it, and then we'll tweak it as we go along. And you can tell us, no, we don't want this, we want this, and that's fine. And this will be this continuous improvement, idea is starting to sink in with them. It took a while, but it's getting there. And I think now that they see the possibilities, they're like, now they're thinking about, we've focused right now on domestic, for example. Now they're thinking about, there's these other inspection types that we think, can work. And then they're starting to think about, what about foreign? Right. So that's been really good. I like definitely the Agile approach, definitely the demoing every 2 weeks, because they want to see progress. And then when they see progress every other week, it makes them excited.
Yeah, and it's that mission focus, right? I think I agree. They're excited because at first it's like, okay, here's a new technology I'm going to have to learn and I'm going to have to deal with. And they're going to build something, and now I'm going to have to change my processes and deal with it. And as they're seeing that actually that's not the case, what happens is we're building it to spec. We're building it for them. We're building it based on their needs, and incorporating all that feedback. That's where they start to get really excited about it, and they see that it's not just you do Agile right. It's not just things go on the backlog, but they actually come off the backlog, right? And when they start to see that, all of a sudden it's like, okay, so I can tell you what my needs are, and you're going to build something that's going to address my needs, and you get that buy-in across all these different centers, which is the really hard thing.
and what's nice about we have all of our stakeholders together though. So we have the different program areas together in the meeting when we do sprint review. At first the team's like, all right, do we really want to put them all together? It's like, yes, because we're building something and then drugs or the pharma side's like, why did you build that? We didn't ask for that. It's like, no, but foods asked for it, right? But then drugs is like, but you know what? That's a great idea. We could use that. I was like, absolutely, because what we're building is for everyone. It's not just for one. Now, we can tailor depending, but these functionalities, if we build it for foods and if pharma likes it, it's easy to incorporate. So it gives each other ideas as well, right? Because even the farmers, the food side's like, oh, what? They're doing that? Oh, we could use that. That'll make our life easier. We hadn't thought about that. And now we can say, well, that's what we're building, and we can give it to you as well.
Yeah, we don't have to say, oh, well, you didn't ask for that at the beginning. It's too late now,
Oh,
right?
sorry.
It's just, no, that's a great idea. You like
Yeah.
it? Great. You'll see it in the next release. Any other questions?
I know you guys defined how you guys went about what to do, which was, you guys got this integrated, thank you, stakeholders team together, and you guys are focusing on processes, not just programs or, business units. So you guys picked this inspection process for the proof of concept. How are you guys going to go about next? Like, how do you guys prioritize which process to pick first? Are you guys doing process mining to figure out which gives you best ROI, or like what are the plans?
So let me clarify. So inspections has a lot of components, right? And there's a lot of different types of inspections. I'd say there's 20. I'm not an expert in inspections, but we have a whole list of inspection protocols. And so we decided to pick, for the proof of concept, we picked, I think, the drug side, one type of inspection. They have multiple types. So we picked one simple type so that we can do proof of concept. But then also, Office of Regulatory Affairs, they said, if you can prove that you can do the basic IP here, but also if you can prove that you can do the most complicated inspection type, which is the foods side, then it'll build confidence. Then we will be confident that you can build for all inspections. Now, as far as once we're done with the pilot for these specific inspection types, how do we prioritize the next set? That's where the stakeholder group's in, right? We have not only do we have our stakeholder groups who are our SMEs, our subject matter experts, but we also have above them, their management is the business tech advisors. Right? So they're more the decision makers in the centers. And so we also meet with them on maybe a monthly basis. So they are the decision makers also. So the SMEs give us insight into the details of what is needed. And then we have the business tech advising team that we meet with regulatory as well. And they determine, they're going to give us the priority, right? And, with Agile, prioritization is done frequently, right? Because again, in the world in the regulatory world, things change constantly. Priorities of the agency change. So we're not going to lock in and say, okay, these are the 20 things that we have, and this is exactly the order we're going to do, right? Because we have, again, we're working in 2-week cycles, so we can always reprioritize. So that's where the backlog grooming comes in.
I think, I guess, to add to that in terms of our recommendations to them, because ultimately they do the priorities, but our recommendations to them, I think we look at where we can get closure on the processes. So look at maybe a persona and a task and figure out, okay, where can we, what are the applications we can start filling in where this is sort of a complete thing? They do this and this is their task, rather than maybe an application that would find itself in the middle of a couple other applications. And so field inspections is one of the things that we're looking at. It fits naturally that way. You go to a site, you do your inspection, you conclude it. And so that's a really good candidate for a first application, because you have an input, you do your thing, and you have an output. And now you can start to chain onto it. So now we take the post-inspection process, maybe, as an example, right, as a second application, and it fits very nicely into our first one. You're not having to jump between different things. You continue that field inspection process that we just did, and now you do your post-inspection, and now you go back to your legacy applications until we manage to sort of sub those out. So I think in terms of our recommendations to centers about which applications to develop or what order, we're really looking at where it can be sort of not necessarily intrusive, or where we can have that closure end to end, and you can do all your work in the app without having to jump around. Well, so I think for the process mining, you're going to need some data first, right? So there's a little bit of, in our case, I think process mining is really, really useful once you have something in place to identify areas of continued focus or expansion. But here we're sort of doing something, we can't apply process mining to the legacy app, unfortunately, because the legacy app that they built outside of Appian doesn't support it. And for our new app, we don't necessarily want to wait until we get all the data back. We want to get people hands-on. We want to get people using this. We want to get people out in the field. And we'll be able to retrospectively do the process mining or for deciding subsequent prioritizations. For that first app or two, we want to get people out there. We want to get people using it. And then we'll have that data that we can look at and further prioritize from.
Excuse me. So what was one of your lessons learned while implementing Appian?
That's a good question. So
this is more for the government.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
excellent.
Lessons learned
Yeah,
for
lessons learned so far from implementing Appian.
that if it can't do it now, it doesn't hurt to ask Appian. Because one of the key features was printing offline, which I believe is not possible. And so we actually went to Appian and said, this is key for us. As part of our work, we need to be able to print offline. And it's really make or break for our proof of concept, because that is for our foods folks, and eventually for international inspections, thinking ahead, we know that's a key component. And so, I think a lot of times when we are looking at the various technologies or platforms that we want to use for our applications, sometimes, as soon as we see, I guess, a blockage, and that says, no, they can't do it, I think we're quick to move on. But I think because Appian could do everything else, and it was just this one thing, and so so we did reach out and ask, hey, can you do printing, right? And so I think that's what's being, and so Appian is working on that and helping us with the printing offline. I'd say that's probably the biggest thing.
Thanks. And I think we are at time, so thank you everyone for coming. Really appreciate it.